Welcome back to the Home Stretch podcast. Today's episode is all about communication, which I would say is probably the number one thing, one of the most important things when it comes to buying your first home, because when the communication breaks down, it's not fun. You feel left in the dark, you feel like you don't know where you stand, you feel like you don't know what's going on, and you feel like banging your head against a brick wall. Don't do that, but like that's how you feel. And I feel like within our circumstances, we had quite good communications all round. The only main issue for us was the estate agents dealing with the property and the seller solicitor, who was also terrible. But apart from that, we had great communication, and I feel like that helped us stay in a very positive mindset when it came to buying our first home. So today we're going to talk all about communication and things to look out for, setting boundaries, understanding the ways in which different people within the house buying process communicate, because, solicitors are very formal, okay? And some like having a phone call, some prefer emails or whatever. You can kind of do your own thing though. If you prefer to speak to someone in person or on the phone, then you can do that. So it kind of is what's best for you, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's paying all this money. So you should be able to communicate and expect people to reply to you and be polite and nice within your house buying process. And it's not going to be plain sailing. It's probably not going to be easy. And because there's so many moving parts and there's so many different people within the process of you buying your first home, it's hard for everyone to be in alignment and everyone to have perfect communication styles. That it just probably isn't going to happen, because there's loads of different people within the process. So hopefully you just have the odd one or two that's just a little bit annoying, like we did, and you can deal with it and you can get the keys and move into your very first home. So for a little bit of context in terms of our personal situation, we obviously took 6.5 months to move into a house, and there was breakdown in communications in terms of our solicitor and the seller solicitor, them communicating together, because we were supposed to get our license money taken out. And I think our solicitor thought the other side was further along in their process than they were, and they was not. We waited an extra 3.5 months for the seller's solicitor to sort out the new build the sellers was moving into. That is such a tongue twister. But they basically had loads of delays with their new build. And I did a whole other episode about new builds, which you should definitely go and listen to and watch. If you're buying a new build, obviously we didn't move into a new build ourselves, but there was just loads and loads and loads of communication issues within that new build and buying that new build from the sellers. We're quite communicative with the sellers. We spoke to them probably most out of everyone in the process, which is crazy, but they helped us feel so calm. They kept us in the loop of things that even our solicitor didn't know about. So we were kind of filling him in on what was going on. And it's like, the seller solicitor should be doing this, not you guys. You're paying her a lot of money and she's not really doing her job properly. But yeah, the communication is super, super, super important when it comes to buying your first home. So that's what today's episode is all about. I hope, you get some kind of clear expectations about communication with estate agents, solicitors, possibly sellers. I will dive into that, because not everyone thinks that sharing the contact details to the sellers is a good thing. We did very early on, and it was the best thing that ever happened. People will have conflicting, thoughts and opinions about this, and some people think it leads to negative things and, miscommunication. But for us, if we didn't have the contact details of the sellers and was in contact with them, we would have been left in the dark for weeks and weeks, not knowing where we stood, probably feeling quite down, probably feeling quite like we wanted to give up, not knowing where we stood. What's going on? Are we going to lose the house? Do they even want to move into their new build? Is the sale going through? It would have caused more issues than not. And they kept us sane. They were the loveliest older couple ever. And we're just so lucky that we managed to get them as, our sellers, because they kept us in the loop all the time. They would probably call us like once or twice a week. I think they were speaking to us more than we were speaking to them. And, you know, every time they had communication with their seller's solicitor and the new build solicitor, they would tell us straight away. They'd be like, this is what they said, this is what's happening, this is where we stand. And if we had any questions, we would just call them and they would answer them straight away. I feel like, yeah, out of everyone in our personal circumstances, the sellers were the best. They really were, which is crazy because, you know, you're both just trying to move into a new house and make the process as smooth as possible. Why are we helping everyone else do their job and they're getting paid? They're the ones that are getting paid loads of money. Don't know. It's a bit annoying, but we'll definitely get onto that. So firstly, why is communication even that important when it comes to the house buying process? Now, there's a lot of moving parts when you buy your first home or any home in general. And because there's so many different things that are going on, everyone has to work in unison together. Now, when you have a chain, which is like a few houses lined up, like with sellers and buyers, and it starts at the bottom. So like the person with no chain, and then, I don't know, our sellers, and then our sellers moving into a new house might have buyers and sellers as well. So they had to look for another house and have someone buy them their house. And then it's just continuously going up. So the more people you have in a chain, the more complicated it gets. Because with us, it was just me and Nathan, the sellers, the couple. And technically we were in a chain with the property developer. But in my eyes, it kind of was just us two because we were the main people. Basically, the third person in the chain was the property developer, technically. But the house obviously was ready. It hadn't got people in there that had to be moved out. So like in my mind, I'm like, that's not really a chain, but technically we were in a chain. So when you are going through the house buying process and you have buyers or sellers and they're buying or selling a new build, don't think that that doesn't mean they're in a chain, because technically they still are, especially if it's like a brand new property, like a new build. And even though no one's living in there, it is still a chain. It's still a part of the chain. But anyways, the longer the chain, the more complicated it is, because each house that is being bought or being like moved into, being bought or sold, they're going to come with their solicitors, their estate agents, and their buyers and sellers. So like there's all this group of people working together to try and get a house like sold and bought. Now, we were quite lucky because obviously our chain was very, very small. So we weren't having to chase someone who was in house number 7 in a chain and we were like house number 1. So we were quite lucky in that sense. When there's more people, it's going to be a bit more complicated. But yeah, in terms of communication and stuff in general, you as a buyer will be generally kind of speaking to your solicitor mostly, because they're the one that's going to be handling your case. You're going to be speaking to them throughout the whole process in terms of the searches, in terms of making sure you're happy with everything legally, making sure, you know, like they've got all of their ducks in a row in terms of the legal side of buying a property. You'll also be speaking to maybe a mortgage advisor or a bank when you get your mortgage for your property. And for us, we were in communications with our mortgage advisor very early in the process, before we even started viewing houses. And we were in communication with them when we got an offer when we offered a price on the house we're in now. And what they'll do is kind of like the back end mortgage side of things. So we didn't actually hear from them hardly at all until our house sale completely went through, because every now and again, the interest rate was coming down. So we would get in contact with our mortgage advisor and say, oh, we've seen that, you know, Halifax interest rate has gone down. Can you reapply for our mortgage to get it at a lower rate? And this was really quick. They would literally do it the same day, which was great. But apart from that, we didn't speak to them at all. So from like mortgage offer accepted, and after our house price got accepted on this house we're in now, and that was through the estate agents, that's someone else that you communicate with, we didn't speak to our mortgage advisors that often at all. So mortgage advisors, not as much. And then solicitors the whole way through the process. That's why they kind of get a bit of stick when it comes to buying your first house, which I feel kind of bad for. And, you know, I think conveyancers, solicitors, kind of the same thing. I feel like they do get a bad rep and they do get some stick, because the one like group of people, or not even to blame, But when you're going through the house buying process is your solicitor. It's sort of like because they're your main point of contact, you kind of, if something goes wrong, you go to them and you probably take it out on them as well. I feel like we were chasing quite a lot, and, things don't really move unless you chase. Now, they can if you've got a really good solicitor, but the seller solicitor needs to be really good too. And for our circumstances, the seller solicitor was not. So we were chasing so much. Now, when it comes to estate agents who are selling the property that you're buying, the estate agents do not work for you. As the buyer of the house, they don't work for you. You're not paying them any money. They're not getting any commission. The only way they're getting money is through the sellers that are selling the house through them. Until the sale goes through. So when we were in communications with the estate agents, because they can help actually push things along. So if, for example, you're waiting on something with the seller solicitor and you're not in contact with the sellers and you don't have their contact details, you can use the estate agents to your advantage. And we did this quite a lot. So you'd call up the estate agents and say, right, we're waiting on an indemnity policy that we've not seen. That's what our solicitor's waiting for from the seller solicitor. Can you see what's going on and why it's not being provided, or how long it's going to take? So they'll then contact the seller solicitor, which they usually do the same day, to be honest. We found that out, which was quite good. But they'll then contact them, chase them, and then hopefully get back to you and let you know the updates. So when we did this, things moved really, really quick, and it's just having that extra person in the middle to help push things along. Now, the estate agents that our sellers were using were really rude to us. They made our experience terrible, and to the point where if we see their signs up in the new city where we're living, it's like, oh my God, we hate you. Just hate seeing it. They didn't make our experience nice. And I feel like when you move into your first house, you want it to be nice and you want it to be enjoyable and you want to have fun and you want to get excited. But they were just so rude on the phone. And it probably has something to do with the fact that they're not getting paid anything from us, right? However, the sale wouldn't go through without us. So you are still a very, very, very important piece to the whole house buying process when you're buying this house. Without you, they're not even going to get their commission. I feel like maybe with some estate agents, they probably feel like, you're just another number. And if it's not you, then someone else will probably buy the house. But then I do hear stories of really, really nice estate agents that really care for the buyers as well. Because at the end of the day, if an estate agent gives you a really bad experience and they're rude or they're not helpful or they just don't get back to you when they say they do, because we had that all the time. We got told, we'll call you back with an update, didn't hear from them for a week, emailed, ignored. And it's just really frustrating. We're not going to want to use you when we eventually move out of this house, because you've got to think as first-time buyers, do you really think that you'll be in the same house for the rest of your life? Probably not. You'll probably pick up and move somewhere else, maybe upsize, maybe move to a different location. You will probably move, probably. So if you have a bad experience with a certain estate agent, why would you want to use them again? You wouldn't. You would stay way clear. And that, I feel like, if you're treating first-time buyers like that, do you really expect them to use you in the future? It's not going to happen. And when you have an even worse experience, I feel like you then boil up this little bit of not even hate, but anger, because it's a stressful situation anyways when you buy a first home. And I feel like anything extra that gets added onto that is just more annoying. So now, if we ever get asked about so which estate agents would you recommend? The first thing we say is, we would not recommend this one anyways. Just do not go with them. So it just leaves a bit of a bad taste in your mouth. And I try to not be bitter about it, because again, without them, we wouldn't have this house, right? But I feel like they handled the situation not a great way. And, it's really opened my eyes in a sense of they really just didn't care, which is fine. Everyone's entitled to their own life and whatever. But I feel like everyone has their own stuff going on. We can't just think that we're going to get put on a pedestal just because we're first time buyers wanting to move in quickly. And by the end of it, we just kind of left it. We did speak to a few different people at the estate agents, which were a bit nicer. And, we did say we've been ignored. We feel really deflated. We don't really know what's going on. And we've kind of been kept in the dark, and it's not really fair on us. And, they were very nice and forthcoming. They're like, really sorry this has happened. Like, I'll help you and see what I can do. And he actually got things done the same day and was really super helpful. So I think we might have just had a bad person that was dealing with our case. And, at the end of the day, we've got a house now, right? So technically, we're not really too bothered. But I just feel like it's good to share things that we've gone through. So there's things for you to look out for as well, and how best to tackle, situations where people are ignoring you and they're not calling you back or they're not replying to your emails, because it can feel like the hardest thing in the world when people just seem like they don't care. And this is such a huge decision and thing that you're going through when you're buying a first house. It's very stressful and there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's exciting, but it's also pretty, you are under a lot of stress. So when people are rude or people ignore, it just adds fuel to the fire, and it makes it so much more frustrating and so much more annoying. But I promise you, no matter how difficult some people can be, things do work out like as they're supposed to, and you will get your keys if you're supposed to get your keys. And I feel like it does teach you a lot of patience and a lot of understanding, like just kind of putting yourself in the shoes of that person. Maybe they were just really busy. Maybe they were going through something in their life that, you're not going to take a priority, which is fine. So I think it's kind of like looking at the bigger picture when it comes to communicating and stuff within the house buying process. But that was just a little glimpse of what happened with us and our situation. And, every situation is going to be very different. You're going to have more people, less people, more communicative, less communicative, more annoying, less annoying. Like, you're going to have different moving pieces within your house buying process. So hopefully a few kind of tips and stuff that I can give you today will help you be prepared, help you know what to expect, and how to deal with, quite rude people when it comes to the house buying process. The one thing that I wish we had done differently in this whole process was kind of setting clear boundaries with our solicitor about when we should ask for updates, how often we should, chase, because you don't want to come across as annoying, but you also don't want to come across as you don't care. Because I have friends that didn't chase throughout the whole process, and it took them like 8 or 9 months to move into the house, and they only chased right at the end because they were kind of like, well, what's going on? And then that's when things started to move. So I feel like solicitors do get busy. Obviously, other people within this house buying process and things moving around do get busy. So you might get put on the back burner a little bit. So I do think chasing really, really helps. So one thing that I do wish that we did was speak to our solicitor early on and say, should we contact you like weekly? Can we give you a call? Can we give you like a weekly call just to see how things are and make sure things are still moving? Because the last thing you want to do, like we did right at the start of the process, was just think that everything's happening for you in the background. Now, we didn't chase for the first 5 weeks. And because of that, we didn't get our contract pack until we started chasing. You should get this within like the first couple of weeks when you like have your offer accepted and stuff, by the way. You should not be waiting 5 weeks for a contract pack. I've got a whole nother episode on that if you want to check it out, where I kind of describe and go into detail about what contract pack is and how to not do what we did and didn't chase and didn't see a contract pack for 5 weeks. So because of that, we were now behind like 3 weeks for no reason at all because we didn't chase. And you don't get a handbook on how to deal with the process or what happens in the house buying process. You just kind of get on with it and just hope that everything's working in the background. But I'm telling you now, it's not. You need to be proactive. If you really want things to move quickly, you need to be proactive. You need to chase, you need to call, you need to email, not to the point where you're being annoying, because we don't want to annoy anyone, but we do want to be proactive, especially with our communication. So we, as, buyers, we don't want to be rude. We don't want to be obviously aggressive or anything, but you just want to kind of be firm but fair, right? Know where you want to stand, know where you do stand, and also you can have expectations on where you think you'd want to be and how quickly you think things should move. But realistically, you just got to hope that your solicitor is just quick at what they do. Ours was, which we were really, really grateful for. But the seller's solicitor, like I said before, was just slow, so slow. And because of that, we were so far behind on a lot of stuff. And it is what it is. But if you've got two solicitors and there's only you and the sellers in the chain and both solicitors are really quick, you'll probably move in 3 months. Less than that, actually. Less than that if there's no chain. But that's another thing as well. If you have no chain on either side, that again equals a pretty quick sale. Now, I've got a friend that moved into a house and there was no chain on either side. And she moved in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Now, that is like the quickest I've ever heard anyone move. I feel like for us, we would have been a bit like, oh, that's a bit too quick for us to move in. But yeah, 6.5 months for us was too long. I think 4 months is like a perfect amount. And I think at the moment, the rough estimate on like moving into your new house is anywhere between 4 and 6 months. That is like the norm now. And it's a shame because our solicitor did all of his part and we were ready to move in within 3 months, which is what we thought was the average. And just be prepared that it probably won't take that long. It probably will take longer. But yeah, 6.5 months was a bit too late for us. We didn't get to move in before Christmas. But now that we've been in the house for a whole year, well, it will be a whole year next Feb, but it will be coming up to Christmas this year, which is so crazy to say. I can't wait to do like Vlogmas and just decorate the house all Christmassy. It's going to be so cute. In hindsight, it actually was better for us in the long run, like having Christmas out the way and being able to enjoy Christmas and not have to worry about moving and settling in, because when we moved in Feb this year, the house was messy, like it was crazy. We had to paint everything and decorate. So I feel like if we did move in last year in November, it would have been too soon. And this year, we're now hosting the whole family for Christmas, and the house is slowly but surely starting to feel more like home. We've actually just finished doing the garden outside the front. Now, if you're putting up plants and stuff, it takes a long time, by the way, and it's hard work. That's all I'm going to say. It took us a couple hours to do. It was me and Nathan's mum, Kate, and she's absolutely smashed it for us. So yeah, she's done such a good job. And we actually went to the garden centre today to pick out loads of pots and loads of flowers. So it's so nice when you see things coming together, but it does take time. And you can't move into a house and expect things to be ready and finished and perfect when you move in. You're going to have time to settle. You're going to have time to decorate. And it might be a bit easier if you move into a new build because obviously they're, newer and they're a bit more modern and they might be a bit more to your style. But if you move into like an older home, it might need a bit more work. And if that's the case, it's going to need more money. It's going to need more time, and things take time. So yeah, so I do think it will be the right time for you. But yeah, the 6.5 months, it was a long 6.5 months. Hopefully it's not that long for you, but I have had people move in like a year, and I'm like, I could not wait a whole year to move into this house. As much as I love this house, would I have waited a year? Do you know what? I might have done, to be fair. That's with communication. If we understood where the other side and the seller's solicitors was, we wouldn't have got our LISA money out earlier. We basically would have saved about 3 weeks if that was the case. But it was kind of out of our control really, because the property developer was the one that gave all the delays. So the 3 months worth of delays, we were waiting for documents about his stuff. And I did a whole episode on that as well, by the way, about new builds and the faff sometimes that comes with new builds. But we were waiting for buildings regulation certificate and build zone warranty for 3 months, not us, but the sellers. And, because of that, we were just all in limbo. We just didn't know what was going on. I was like, is he a cowboy builder? Is there even a new build? And the sellers were like, no, we've been there, we've seen it. It's like, that's great. That's good to know. So yeah, I think there was a lot of moving parts and a lot of waiting and a lot of not knowing. And like I said, if we didn't have that communication with the sellers, we wouldn't have known half the stuff that was going on. And we would have just felt really stuck and just like, what's going on? So communication, basically, the key point out of all of this is communication is so important. So you need to make sure that you're on the ball with it. So then like no one else has any excuses, and you can just keep on asking for updates, keep on asking for, when things should come in, because we did that with our solicitors quite a lot. And, asking them roughly how long does it take for searches to come back? And he said, anywhere between he said usually it's about 6 weeks, but if there's like an issue with land registry, or if there's like something that we can't get a hold of, or if there's something that the seller's solicitor can't confirm and has to go back to the sellers, there's just loads of moving parts and it could take longer than that. So all your searches are fully completed from when your solicitor starts them, from when you sign off everything and say, yep, we're happy with everything. We've read that, because you get a real thick document of like your searches and you have to read all of them like in detail and make sure that you're happy with them. And if you're not, you can then go back with another inquiry and be like, well, we're not too sure about this. What's that? Can you like dig into that a bit more? So yeah, so that's how long your searches take, but it will depend on what inquiries get brought up and also how quick the solicitors are, which can sometimes be quick and sometimes be slow. I will say in terms of communication style, now everyone here will be different, but for us, we love a phone call. Like speak to someone on the phone and you can get all your 5 questions that you've got instead of waiting for them to reply to an email. I feel like emails are annoying, but they're a bit more formal. You basically have a written something, right? You've got something documented. You've got something that you can see with your eyes. I actually emailed you this a month ago and you've not got back to me, that sort of thing. Whereas when you have a phone call, yes, it's not kind of like word for word transcribed of what you spoke about, but you can get all your questions out in the open and things move quite quickly. I feel like when we called, things would happen the same day. And when we called the estate agents to chase the seller's solicitor, which was quite often, then things got done the same day, which is crazy, right? And that just goes to show, I think, that like when you do chase, things do get done quite quickly. And sometimes people do miss things. Like our seller's solicitor missed an inquiry for like 6 weeks. So the last thing that our solicitor was waiting for, he was like, she's not answered it in ages. I don't know what's going on. I emailed her. He emailed her like 4 times and she just ignored him. So it just goes to show that like our solicitor was actually really, really good, but she just wasn't the seller solicitor. And we called up the estate agents and we were like, what's going on? The seller solicitor is like really not good at her job. No offense, but our solicitor's been waiting on a pretty simple inquiry now for like 6 weeks. What's happening? And they were like, we'll speak to her and see what's going on. And then when they did, they got done the same day. The inquiry got answered the same day. And then she said to him, the seller solicitor said to our solicitor, you know, oh, sorry, I missed that. And it's like, how can you miss an inquiry? Very simple like question as well, not something that takes weeks and weeks to get back. You know, we just didn't understand why that wasn't being answered. But anyways, it did. And we were like, oh, this is great. And then all of our searches came back, which was fine. And then we thought we was going to start sending across deposit monies. We started getting our LISA out. Nathan did. And then it turns out that we had to wait on the new build, like the property developer in the seller's new build that they were moving into. And then that was another 3-month delay. And then the 3-month delay led to our LISA being basically running out. And then we had to reapply for the LISA to be extended, which took another 3 weeks altogether as well, because we had to wait for HMRC. Oh, it was just all a bit of a nightmare, really. It was one thing after another. And the day we exchanged was quite honestly the best day of our life. And actually saying that, getting the keys was the best day of our life, I must say. So just going back to the sellers and when it comes to kind of contact details with them, like I said before, there's going to be a difference in opinion when it comes to getting the contact details of the sellers. It was actually the sellers that asked for our details. Now, we had our offer accepted and then we booked a second viewing for this house about maybe 2 weeks after our offer got accepted, and we wanted to kind of measure up some blinds, measure up here, because we're kind of in a bit of a cove where this is the stairs and the couch is like in the stairs, underneath the stairs type thing. So we wanted to measure up, making sure the couch that we're going to get is going to fit and things like that. So when we came to do the viewing, it was the sellers that were here and we were like, great, there's not a estate agent in sight. We can have a chat with them and not feel under pressure with the estate agents there. It was fab. And it was actually the sellers that was like, oh, shall we exchange contact details just to kind of keep in contact throughout the process? And we were like, oh, yes. We kind of didn't want to be the ones to be like, can we have your contact details, please? But they said it first and we were like, oh, yeah, we were going to ask you the same thing. So perfect. So we exchanged numbers. And then from then on, we didn't really speak to them that much to start. And it was more of like probably halfway through to nearer the end of the process that we were speaking to them a lot more, because we were like, what's going on? Why is it taking so long? We both wanted to move in before Christmas. There was this kind of like push to get things done before Christmas, and it was their property developer that was having all the delays. So they were getting really frustrated, bless them. And throughout the whole thing, they were keeping us updated. they were even forwarding us emails from their solicitor to the property developer solicitor, who was answering the emails in a really weird way. And they were like, they're not making a lot of sense. Our solicitor's really confused. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? And yeah, it was all a bit of a kerfuffle, really. But, I think it just goes to show that for us and our personal situation, it worked out perfectly. The sellers were so amazing. They were so communicative. Without them telling us what was going on, I would have been so much more stressed. So I will stand here and be an advocate for getting the contact details of the sellers because it worked out for us. That's not meaning to say that it's going to work out for you too, but I do personally think, obviously, because I've experienced it, that it's a positive. And, you can both share details of where you're at in the process and not feel like you're just being left in the dark. Because yes, a lot of times in the process, you can feel like you don't know what's going on. You're not being told where you're at, or you're waiting for something, but then the other person's saying that they're actually waiting for something. Like, it's all quite confusing. Whereas when you talk to the sellers directly, they have that direct line of communication with their solicitor. And because of that, you're able to say to them, well, our solicitor's waiting on this from your solicitor and they've been waiting for it for ages. So we helped use them to our advantage, as well as them finding out things about us. What's going on with your LISA, blah, blah, blah. So realistically, I do think it was the best thing. And I will stand here and say it was a benefit to us. If we didn't have them, our solicitor wouldn't have known half the stuff, where they stood with everything and that sort of thing. So yeah, I personally think it's a really good thing. And why not? If it's going to make your experience less stressful, why would you not want that? I don't get it. I can understand if you have, a seller that is a bit, of not a nice person. They're a bit impolite, or they're a bit agitated, or I don't know, just start turning a bit mean. I can see how it can get a bit nasty. But as long as you just be a nice, good, kind, normal person, it shouldn't get like that. And even if it did start getting a bit more shifty, just stop communication entirely and just go through the estate agent. So I think there's ways of going around it, but for us, it was really positive and really beneficial. So I will always stand here and say that it worked for us, so it could work for you. And in the future, when we do maybe sell this house one day, eventually, I would love the buyers to have our contact details to keep them in the loop, because I know how it feels to feel in the dark, not knowing what's going on, because at the end of the day, it's your dream house that you're buying, right? It's a home that you're going to spend a lot of memories and a lot of time with, and you just want the process to be as smooth as possible. So if the, sellers help with that, then why not? So all in all, the main points really is being polite, but being assertive. You want to be able to express how you're feeling and be able to get the information that, you're paying a lot of money for the house, for solicitor fees and stuff. You should be able to get clear communication back. If you're going through issues with your solicitor or an estate agent, or just someone, that's supposed to be helping you in this process, you can go to higher management and say, can I speak to the manager at your firm, or can I speak to another person on that knows the case, and explain to them how you're feeling, because you don't want to get into a situation where you've got a solicitor and you're not vibing with them and they're just not being helpful and they're actually being not nice at all. You're paying a lot of money to these people, and the last thing you want is a really bad experience. So I feel like if you can do things to change that, then try. I've heard of experiences of my friends where they have gone to higher management and said that solicitor is just not working, and they can move the case across to someone else. I don't know if you have to pay a little bit more money or what the process in that is, but it is possible. So don't feel like you're stuck with a solicitor that is just not very nice, or they're mean, or you're just not getting along with them, or they're ignoring you, or they're not letting you know what's going on. I feel like you're allowed to know where your situation is and how your house buying process is going, because you're the one moving into this house, not them, and you're paying them money. So the last thing you want is to feel like you're being left in the dark and feeling more stressed about that. So just go to higher management and speak to someone, and I'm sure someone will be able to help. So that was today's episode, all about communication in terms of buying your first house. And I hope that something there was a bit useful. I hope maybe listening to our personal circumstances and what we did maybe will hopefully help you too, because one of the main things was getting the contact details of the sellers. That helped us hugely, so that might help you too. Communication in general, just kind of try and keep it, clear, setting your boundaries, setting your expectations, being polite, being assertive, getting things in writing, not just phone calls all the time, because it's good to have timestamps on things, and, just knowing where you stand in writing format is always good. And also using, the estate agents to help push the seller solicitor along, or the actual sellers themselves. There's so much stuff you could do. And yeah, the only annoying thing is if you do have a larger chain, it's a bit harder to then chase 5 solicitors up the chain that are just taking ages. So hopefully you haven't got a long chain, because if you do, that's just going to make life a little bit more difficult. So yeah, that was today's episode. I hope something in there was very useful for you, and I hope to see you next time.